college classic. Did you say college class? Oh, sure you did. Look what we're reading. The Ten Commandments. The Passover. Now the Passover is in Exodus 12:3. That night the king, his officials, and all the other Egyptians were awakened. There was a loud crying throughout Egypt because there was not one home in which there was not a dead son. And that's going to happen in the rapture. You're going to be awakened all over. Either you're going to hear cries at schools, you're going to hear cries in classrooms, you're going to hear cries in nurseries, you're going to hear cries in high schools and junior high schools, you're going to hear cries at night, and you're going to hear people crying over their children that are gone, no longer here. And God says that the womb is polluted. There won't be no return of those children. God won't allow any children. There'll be a great suffering for children, but it won't be. Because there was not one home in which there was not a dead son. God told Moses that when he sent the final plague, the Israelites would leave Egypt that same night. He gave Moses instructions for the Israelites, telling them how they must protect their own firstborn sons. Every Israelite family must kill a young male lamb or goat and put some of the blood round the door of their house. Then they must roast the lamb and eat it with herbs and flat loaves of bread, made without yeast. Now the yeast was a sign of some sort of covenant and a puffing up that shows that we were sharing and delights and delicacies and everything else. And this was the final of the sharing before it was done. So this yeast was showing how they shared with the Egyptians in slavery, and God was going to break that covenant and its oath. God made that oath, and God made that covenant, and God was going to break it now. 435 years of that covenant. They're only supposed to be in slavery 400 years, but they want 435 years. When God comes to bring judgment and sees the sign of blood above your doors, he will pass over your houses and your children will be saved. Moses told the Israelites at midnight, God passed over every house where he saw the blood, but he struck dead every firstborn Egyptian baby boy from the king's own son and to the sons of prisoners. When Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, discovered the dead body of his own firstborn, he knew that he had brought this destruction on his country because of his cruelty. Now, Exodus 12:33, the Egyptians urged the people to hurry and leave the country. They said, we will all be dead if you don't leave. Now, there were a lot of Egyptians that had become friends to the Hebrews. They had them in their houses, their father's house, their great-grandparents' house, for many years as prisoners. So they became friends, known friends, and allies, and trusted in each other. And so this taking of their God and of their root wasn't so uncommon, but yet it wasn't the Hebrew way. Now that the Egyptians had all lost their firstborn sons, they couldn't wait for the Israelites to leave Egypt. As you study the lost books of the Bible and other books that are not in the actual text of what we're learning of God Almighty, the Apocrypha, the Septuagint, and the Aramaic, and the Hebrew, we find that not all the Egyptians were active to this, meaning that some were delivered and others left Egypt as well with the Hebrews, which is interesting because most of the Egyptians' firstborn sons died, but they had to hide their firstborn sons so that they wouldn't be killed. But they left that night anyway, so all the firstborn that knew were saved. Many of the Egyptians respected Moses and understood why God had struck them with the most terrifying plagues. They knew that Pharaoh had treated the Israelites badly, forcing them into slavery, condemning them to a life of toil and struggle, while giving very little in return. As hundreds of thousands of Israelites marched out of Egypt, never to return, some of the Egyptians gave their gifts of gold and silver and cattle and sheep and other precious items. After living in Egypt for 430 years, the Israelites were free. Never again would they be treated as slaves or have to bear the iniquity or the indignity of whippings and beatings of cruel and heartless overlords. And families wept tears of happiness as they helped each other along the dusty roads as they drew closer to their beloved homeland with each step. Walking ahead, Moses knew he would lead his people safely home. He thanked God for all he had done and for keeping his promise when he spoke to Moses from the burning bush on Mount Sinai. I am who I am. About 600,000 men, not counting women and children, left Egypt after God had sent the plagues. Did you know that? Wow. Okay, so here we see that God Almighty is true to his word. We can trust that, and we'll always trust that. But some people don't trust that. And they don't know how to trust that. Are you some of that people today who don't trust that or know how to trust that? It's not a laughing matter. It's a very serious issue. Because today, today we are slaves. Many Americans don't know it today, but you're a slave. Drugs, alcohol, you're a slave. Heroin, marijuana, cocaine, speed, crystal meth, acid, mushrooms, whites, bennies, crosstops, Christmas trees, pink hearts, ecstasy. Or the new speed that's going around now. Speed, what is it? Heroin meth? That mess, that heroin has got the sell. Speed's going to take over. They'll find a way to mix them. To sell that heroin in the Middle East. This college class at Campus Hits. We are prisoners. Because if you're a prisoner and you're going to live a drug life, and we try to live drug-free lives, we'll have to use